Hey everyone, and welcome to this great session. This is our last set of sessions for the week before we get into closing ceremonies and our last keynote. So by now you all know how to participate, and it's through the chat or Q&A. You can do chat and Q&A in FeedLoop, or you can do chat and Q&A in Zoom. This is a great presentation. Staying relevant in talent development. Do not get left behind. And your presenter today is Bernadette Costello. Bernadette is a managing partner for BCC Consulting. She collaborates with leaders, teams, and organizations so they can reach their full potential. As a consultant, her methods involve listening intently to the needs of her clients and helping them identify focused solutions that will work best with the culture and climate. As a coach, her focus is to help the client identify a desired impact and develop a clear plan to achieve that result. In consulting and coaching, she uses a variety of strategies and assessments and tools that have evolved after many years of facilitating and coaching. Her experience includes working with organizations, teams, and leaders in the public, nonprofit, and higher education sectors. And I know that she is going to be asking you a lot of questions, so make sure you participate. Ladies and gentlemen, Bernadette Costello.
Thank you, Cheryl, for that introduction. And I'm excited to have people in the session today, in the webinar, about staying relevant and don't get left behind. Before we get started, I want to I'm going to pop a question into chat. So I'd like you to think back in January, the beginning of the year. Did you put together some goals that you were going to invest in your development? And you've stayed focused on them? You've had some goals and you've kind of lost track? Or what goals? So just kind of put into chat how you would respond to that. Had goals and I'm working on them. Had goals and I've lost track. What goals?
Bernadette, we have some folks typing in the FeedLoop chat. Yeah. Let's see. Patricia Hemmer says she's bad about setting goals. And Jerry Bowling says he's working on them. And Charmaine says, what goals in a pandemic year? Yikes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully this session you will leave with a couple of things. One, most of us kind of, when we think about goals and we think about trying to reach them, this is kind of like how we start out. We've got like all these ideas and we've got all of these strategies and we're kind of all over the place. And we're really not really sure how we want to get from where we are to where we want to be. So in today's session, you'll kind of hope, maybe if you're starting out like that, think about, what is most important for you now in the way you want your career to move. What's your plan to move forward and stay on course? And most importantly, what's that strategy you are going to have for kind of moving into how to figure out how to move forward in the way that it's going to help you catapult your career in the way that you want it to do so. So just a couple of things before we kind of get started on that. I have this busy is the new stupid. So I put this up here just to kind of get a sense of, we all say we're all really busy. We've got so much going on. We've got all kinds of stuff happening. And the reason I have busy is the new stupid up here is that it's really a phrase that was coined by Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. And we'll talk a little bit about how they got to that in a minute. But first of all, I'd like to talk just to remind you about the 2018 LinkedIn Workplace Learning Report that was done. In that report that LinkedIn did, they asked a whole bunch of questions about workplace learning. And they identified two statistics that I found to be really interesting. One of them was that managers and leaders said that their number one challenge in workplace learning was getting employees to make time to develop professionally. Now, interestingly, when employees answered similar questions, 94% of employees said that they would stay at the organization if that organization invested in their development. So you think about those two statements, and they're kind of a little bit at odds about with each other. There was an article that was written by Rich Simons. In that article, he puts a lot of stuff out there on LinkedIn. And one of the articles he wrote was about the 5-hour rule. And in that article, he said, if you aren't spending at least 5 hours each week to develop yourself, it could be reading an article, it could be taking a class, it could be taking a workshop, it could be working with a mentor, whatever it is that you are doing to focus on your development. If you aren't spending at least 5 hours, that you are at the point of potentially making yourself irrelevant, that you are being outpaced by other people who are paying attention and who are investing in their development. And those individuals who aren't doing at least 5 hours are really running the risk of being left behind. So when you think about, are you like this, kind of hanging on in your career and letting the wind in the car and everything else take you to all kinds of different places, and you're really not really strategically looking at where you want to go? You just end up being wherever that car takes you. So do you really kind of want to be that passenger, or do you want to be like the driver of your career and the driver of your strategy? So thinking about what does Warren have to say? And so I'm going to share a really quick clip with you about Warren Buffett and Bill Gates talking about busy is the new stupid.
I also remember Warren showing me his calendar, and
I love this.
I had every minute packed, and I thought that was the only way you could do things. And the fact that he is so careful about his time.
Can I show this to the audience? Yeah.
He has days
that there's nothing on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm trying to show.
The best one.
And
well, this is October.
It's very high tech. Be careful.
No,
you might not understand.
I'm going to hold. I'm not going to show the thing. But this is the week of April, of which there are only 3 entries for a week.
Yeah, there'll be 4 maybe by April.
File tax.
So that taught you what? Not to crowd yourself too much and give yourself time to read and think and...
Right, that you control your time, and that sitting and thinking may be a much higher priority than a normal CEO who, there's all this demand and you feel like you need to go and see all these people. It's not a proxy of your seriousness that you filled every minute in your schedule.
And people are going to want your time. Yeah, and it's the only thing you can't buy. I mean, I can buy anything I want, basically, but I can't buy time.
And so to have time is the most precious thing you can have.
I better be careful with it. Yeah. There's no way I will be able to buy more time.
All right. So just want to get some reactions about that video. Anybody have any reactions?
Please welcome.
Well, for me personally, Bernadette, I can tell you the whole thing about he can buy anything he wants, but he can't buy more time.
Yep. Yeah. Anything in chat in feed loop that you can see coming up?
Charmaine says so true. Money can't buy time.
Yeah. 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 And oftentimes we think of time as a commodity that we can somehow do something with. And also, what we also tend to think about in terms of a commodity is the whole idea of knowledge, learning and growth. And time and knowledge, they're both not a commodity. That what's really important about knowledge is that it's about that transfer, that you're giving knowledge to other things, you're giving knowledge to an organization, you're giving knowledge away to be able to help things be better. And it really kind of goes back to that whole idea of Ben Franklin, where I mean, he had that statement where knowledge pays the best dividends. So if you are growing your knowledge and you are actually developing yourself, you are compounding your value, and it will eventually pay significant dividends. Now, the piece that's important is that if you don't, exercise that knowledge and really kind of get it practiced, you really kind of lose it. And then you go back to, am I keeping myself relevant? Am I keeping myself in a place where I can add value? And that's really kind of where we want to focus right now. So it is about not kind of being that whirling dervish in that top spinning, that you're kind of always moving, always going, and you're not really sure kind of where you're going to end up. It's how do I get to the place where I am a continual lifelong learner? All of us are in learning and development, and we tell everybody all the time, you need to give yourself time to learn. You need to give yourself time to think. You've got to continue to develop yourself. And it's really important that we take that best advice so that regardless of where you want to end up in your career, what floor you want to be on, that you are doing what you need to do to make sure that you are focused on what your ultimate goal is and that you have developed strategies to be able to help you get there. So that is what we're going to go to next. So kind of starting your direction and your intention. In this session, there is a document. It looks a little bit like this. It's what your vision. So I'd like to ask you to take that and open that. It's a Word document. I'd like to ask you to open that up. And we're going to go through an activity which is helping you develop your professional mission statement. So Cheryl, people able to get a hold of that? I don't know if you can see stuff on FeedLoop in chat.
Yes, they are able to get a hold of it if they just scroll down below the description. They'll see the file that they can download.
Okay.
Just so you know, Patricia Hemmer added a comment. Took me a second to find this, but someone recently said this to me. Time is the most valuable gift. It cannot be returned and you cannot make more.
Oh, I love that, Patricia. That is absolutely true. That's what makes it such a gift. And, you're always gifting that to other people, gift it to yourself. All right, so even if you can't download this, you can grab a piece of paper, a napkin, index card, a sticky, whatever's close to you. You can actually even do it on your phone if that's easier, or on you can open up a document on Word if you've got your laptop or your tablet open. And we're going to do things in 3 columns. Now in that first column, what I want you to think about is I want you to identify and list out 3 things that you want out of your work. 3 things that are really important for you to be able to get from what you do. So I am going to try and play some music as background music. We'll see if this works. Technology is not always our friend, but I'll give it a whirl. And I'll give you about a minute and a half to come up with your list of 3 things. right. So let's go into that second column. List 3 things that you'd like to experience in your career. So in your career, what are kind of 3 things that are really important for you to experience? Your top 3 things. I'll give you about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes to come up with that list. All right, so let's go to that third column and write down 3 things that make you unique. What are your 3 gifts, 3 things that make you special, that really kind of make you stand out? And again, I'll give you about 1 minute, 1.5 minutes or so to come up with that. All right, so let's go to that last column. Write and list 3 improvements or positive actions that you feel you could take around your career within the next 6 months. So by October-ish or so, what are 3 things that you could do that are improvements or positive actions? So essentially write 3 sentences that say, I can. I'll give you about another 1.5 minutes to come up with that. All right, so I'm going to check in with you, Cheryl. Any questions in the chat of where we're at right now?
No, no questions yet.
All right, so now what I want you to do is in each of the columns where you have those 3 things listed, I want you to circle or highlight, underline, however you want to do it, the one that is most important to you. in each of the 4 columns. All right, so how are we doing? Has everybody been able to identify and circle or highlight their top 1 in each of the different columns? All right, so now we're going to build kind of that mission statement. And what I'd like to ask, it's actually going to be a really long sentence. And that sentence is going to start with the word I will. So write down I will. And after I will, and it doesn't matter how this is going to sound because we're going to do something with it when it's all done. So it may sound a little clunky and it's okay. So I will, after I will, write in what you circled in the 4th column. The very last column, write down what you circled. So I will, what you circled in column 4. Okay, then next you will say using my, and you'll put in after using my the one thing that you circled in column 3, the thing that makes you unique. So I will, what you circled in column 4, using my, that gift that makes you unique, and from column 3. After that, you'll put in order to accomplish what you circled in the 2nd column, the thing you want to experience. So far it sounds like I will, what you included in the 4th column, using my, what you circled in the 3rd column, in order to achieve what you circled in the 2nd column. The last part of that sentence says, and in doing so, I will also achieve what you circled in the very 1st column. So after what you are going to accomplish, and in doing so, I will also achieve what you circled in the very 1st column. So take a minute, read it to yourself. And I know we don't have the ability to kind of talk to each other or for you to talk to somebody else. So I'd like you to read it out loud wherever you are at. Read it out loud to yourself so you hear the words, not just in your head, but you actually hear them. Even if it sounds clunky, it's okay. So I'm going to stop there and see if anybody, and I'm hoping some people will, be willing to be brave and put their mission statement in chat.
And I am ready to read those mission statements.
All right. And everybody's is going to sound clunky, so it's okay. So I'll give people just a minute for those brave attendees who are putting theirs in chat.
Well, Jerry typed in, I will, but stop there.
Okay, all right. So as we're waiting for these brave attendees to put their statement in the chat, how did it feel to say it out loud? What were some kind of like the head explosions that occurred to you as you were reading it out loud? How did it feel? What did you think? So if you could put your reactions in chat.
So I can tell you, Bernadette, as I was doing this, it's really hard to think about your 3 gifts.
What about that is hard?
You know, for me, it's easier for me to think about what I did wrong than what makes me good. So
Yeah.
Jerry's statement is, I will volunteer in areas of interest using his uniqueness of building others up in order to accomplish transition, and in doing so, he will also achieve connectivity to his work.
Wow, what a powerful statement. So Jerry, when you wrote that down and said it out loud, how did that feel?
Achievable, he says.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it sounds like all of those pieces are really interconnected to kind of what feeds your passion and what really kind of makes you want to get up in the morning and face the world. Anyone else willing to be brave like Jerry? Any other takers out there, Cheryl?
Not yet.
Yeah. And Cheryl, to speak to what you talked about is that it's hard for you to come up with your gifts or things that make you unique, because we do have this kind of inner voice self-talk of I could have done this better. I need to improve this. And we all have gifts, and a whole lot more than just 3 of them. And so when you think about how can I utilize my strengths, things that I do really, really well to help me get where I want to be, it's really important to be able to acknowledge what those are, to be able to use them.
Absolutely. Jerry says actually being in the conference is helping him achieve his mission.
Fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. All right. So to get a little bit more about strategy, because remember we talked about, what your purpose is, kind of where you want to go, and kind of move it in a little bit so it becomes a lot more actionable. Because looking at things in 6 months, that's October, that's a long time from now. It would be really easy to kind of put that out there and really not pay a whole lot of attention because you got 6 months, So let's make it a little bit more real. And a little bit more doable. So kind of putting all the pieces together. What I'd like to ask you to do is, this is also a document that is also downloadable for you in the session webinar. You can also, I have it here on the screen. You don't have to download it if you don't want to. So thinking about that mission statement, about what you say, what you will do, you can put that in by October 2021. I will know, or I will be able to blank. So you can kind of just transition that over to this page. And so we're going to do this backwards rather than kind of looking at where we are now and getting to October. We're going to do this in a little bit of a reverse order. So thinking about what you identified that you would want to do that would be positive and actionable for your goals by October. So thinking about what that is, so to be able to get to where you want to be in October, this requires me to, so by September, by the end of September 2021, I will what? So just, you don't have to write out a really long sentence, but just, I will what? To help you be able to get to where you want to be in October. Where do you want to be by September? What's your I will for that? You just put a bullet item. Doesn't have to be a long sentence. And so now that you know where you are by September, think about the end of summer, by the end of August. So kind of continuing to help you get to, so you know where you want to be by September. So to be able to be there in September, by the end of August 2021, I will what? What do you have to do? What do you have to know or be able to do by the end of August to keep you on track? Just write a couple of words there that you can come back to at some point and maybe flesh out a little bit more. So now that you know where you need to be by the end of August, think about the end of July, kind of midsummer. To be able to get to where I said I wanted to be by August, by the end of July 2021, I will know or be able to what? Kind of fill in the rest of that sentence. So now it's starting to get a little bit closer, a little bit more real in terms of near term. So thinking about June, the beginning kind of summer, you know where you want to be by the end of July. So think about, okay, so by the end of June, if I want to be able to get to where I want to be by July, by the end of June, I will blank. So kind of finish that sentence. So now that you have an idea of what you want to have accomplished by the end of June, this is by the end of May. And by the way, that's Saturday. The beginning of May starts, as hard as that is to believe. So by the end of next month, what do you need to have accomplished, what you will know or be able to do to help you get to where you need to be by the end of June? So by the end of May 2021, I will blank. So about 4 weeks from now, what will you have completed? What will you have done? And then lastly, think about who is that accountability partner. An accountability partner is someone who's like a colleague, somebody who's going to ask you, so Cheryl, how you doing on that goal that you set for the end of May? What kind of progress have you made? And I tend to ask people to not necessarily do this for people who are, don't ask necessarily a close friend. Because sometimes a close friend may, the relationship is most important, and they may be a little bit more hesitant to say, so how you doing? You said you were going to do this. What happened? What got in the way? So give somebody an accountability partner that is somebody you trust. It could be somebody that you work with, some other professional colleague, somebody who really cares about you meeting your goals. Could be maybe even a mentor if you've got a mentor. And then how will you connect with them to let them know what your I will statements are? How will you connect with that person to help stay on course? So I'd like to stop there. Cheryl, are there any questions or thoughts or insights or anything in the chat?
Not yet.
All right. So thinking about your I will statement for the end of May, I'd like to ask some of you to put what your I will statement is. Kind of using this group as a pseudo accountability partner for just this moment. So what's your I will statement?
And I think we're all going to be monitoring Jerry.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Denise says this whole thing is giving her a lot to think about, that she needs to ponder some more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because you want to make sure that you are that you've got the right goal in mind, and it may take going back to that mission statement and kind of tweaking a little bit, and then really thinking about, okay, so maybe this, maybe where I want to be, I can't be in 6 months. Maybe it's going to take you a little bit longer. But then thinking about, well, if that longer goal, what do I really want to, where do I want to be in October?
So Carol is saying that her statement is, I will be able to develop a mindfulness strategy by the end of May. And Jerry says I'm putting too much pressure on him.
Yes. That's what happens when you're brave, Jerry. You get that pressure. Yep. Yeah, that's when you, so Carol, when you say, I want to be able to do this mindfulness strategy by the end of May, does that feel doable to you? Does that feel like, yeah, I got this?
And while we're waiting for her to reply, Joy says she will adjust her goals and create her path or journey for the next few months. And Jerry says, I will prepare a resume for transitioning to my area of interest.
Fantastic. Absolutely. So when you say those I will statements, how does that make you feel? What kind of insights do you have on going through this process that we've walked through today?
Bernadette, while we're waiting for folks to reply, I can tell you it makes me feel like they're achievable. Like I'll be able to accomplish something if I focused 1 month at a time instead of, oh my God, I got to get this done by October.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you see that they're building blocks. That, that big goal, everybody has their big, huge BHAG, our big, huge, audacious goal. And we sometimes get frustrated, or we lose track, or we lose momentum. And, when you build kind of like those stepped goals that help you know that you're working on that trajectory, it can really help provide that extra momentum.
Absolutely.
Anything else in chat?
Yeah, Denise says it's nice to take a step back and look at this in a more systematic approach. And she thanks for the structure to get things going. Joy says it adds commitment. Jerry says achievable. Carol says because the challenges necessitate addressing a specific path. And she added that that looking out 6 months helped to look at near-term goals as doable.
Great. Great. I'll just wait another just a couple seconds to see if anybody else puts anything in.
So Bernadette, while we're waiting for folks, my question is it possible to have 2 goals?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. What's important is that you think about how do these goals connect with each other so that you are in alignment.
Yeah, maybe one professional, one personal?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
And sometimes when I'm working with my coaching clients, you know, we'll do this same exercise in terms of kind of like their life vision statement rather than a career vision statement. And this is something you can go back and update because, you know, we're not static people. I mean, life happens to us. We decide that we want to go down road Y, and then we decide, you know, I'm a little bit down that way, and you know, I have another direction that maybe I want to go down. And so we need to shift. You know, we need to have that agility to be able to kind of shift where we feel like we need to be. And so, you know, continually updating this. You know, some of my coaching clients say that, you know, they go back to this on a regular, ongoing basis, like maybe once a year. I know one client actually uses this as part of her kind of a January kind of looking at resolutions. So it's definitely something that you can go back and revisit. And, you know, what we want out of our career and what we want out of our personal life, sometimes you need to think about how do those align with each other? And if they are not in alignment, what does that mean for you?
Right. So Carol has added alignment, and you will find that as you align goals, you're working towards balance.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything else? And what other questions do you have as we kind of wind down the webinar and kind of finish out the staying relevant and not getting left behind? Other questions that you have? Anything showing up in chat, Cheryl, at all?
We do have a question. What if you cannot identify an accountability partner? How can you establish accountability?
What would be, what do you think might be getting in the way of finding an accountability partner? You know, if it's hard to find a person, what are some ways, you know, what I would probably ask somebody in a coaching situation is think about a time where you've had to hold yourself accountable and you've been successful. What did you do to make that work? And then how can you use what you did when you were successful and translate it to this goal here? I'm not sure if that's helpful or not. Any other questions, or did that person respond that that might be helpful?
So let's see. We have quite a few things coming in now. So Carol says, understanding who cares enough. Joy says, grab someone from TOC as some advice.
Great idea.
Carol says, and or how caring matters. Jerry says, my takeaway besides the wonderful exercise is I will not try to stay busy for the sake of stupidity. And Denise is wondering, what advice do you have for someone who feels conflicted about which direction they want their goals to go in? As Cheryl said earlier, if you aren't sure what your best gifts are or are torn between endeavors.
I think at that point, I would probably do some values work and really get aligned around, what are the most important values that you have that are really important to you? And how do those values align with what's important for you to accomplish in your career? Because there's something going on that's really kind of holding you back. And sometimes it can be like an inner voice saying, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I don't know enough. Maybe I'm not up for the challenge. It could be something like that. So I think it really takes some real exploration to kind of figure out what's kind of holding you back from being able to make a commitment to a direction.
So we are seeing Carol saying she finds that she gives herself too much leeway with self-accountability. Mm-hmm. And Joy saying your values are what helps define your mission and vision. And Carol's agreeing with you. Very true.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes we get, it's just like that whole, I used to not be like a big, huge Simon Sinek fan. And then I was teaching a leadership course on social constructs. And we really, I listened to a couple of his videos and we get caught up in the what and the how rather than the why. And the why should drive everything, rather than just kind of going through the motions, going through the tasks. I should do this, therefore I will do that. But really kind of thinking about, do you doing that? Sometimes I do the 5 whys exercise with people of helping them drill down and about getting to what the real why is, what the real purpose is.
Right. So, and we have time for one final comment. That'll come from Joy. Yes, the why, you must know and understand and believe in the why, or the outcome is not as good as it should be. So we have about 2 minutes left. Bernadette, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that last statement that the outcome, you lose interest, you lose momentum, and you don't stick with it. So if you are wondering maybe, why I've not been able to stick with my goals or things I wanted to do, it's just like, were you really aligned with that why, that purpose?
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Bernadette. Another great presentation. As a reminder for everybody, this recording will be uploaded next week, and you will have access to this session as well as every session in the AI for an entire year. So you can connect with Bernadette either through the chat, because I'm sure she'll be in her session visiting, but as well as you can connect with her through the speakers tab. So coming up is our last keynote speaker and some closing comments. And we have some nifty surprises for that as well. So please make sure you join us. Bernadette, thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Cheryl. Thank you.